How does the outlook change now in the series that you have a win under your belt and you have a few more days of life headed to Boston?
I mean, it doesn't change anything. Like I said at the beginning of the series, it's first to four, and we're gonna believe till the end. So we just gotta keep going. I have big belief in this team that we can do it. So we just gotta keep believing.
The Mavericks stave off elimination by crushing the Celtics in Game 4 of the NBA Finals. How it took a total team effort to force a Game 5 back in Boston. This is Inside the Mavs. Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks Pre and Post Game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports as well. The Dallas Mavericks beat down the Boston Celtics 122-84, a 38-point crushing of the Celtics in Game 4 of the NBA Finals to force a Game 5 back in Boston on Monday. The 38-point victory, the third largest margin of victory in NBA Finals history. The Boston Celtics scoring a season-low 84 points as the Mavericks end the Celtics' 10-game postseason winning streak, as the Celtics now try to win the championship on their home floor on Monday night. But the Mavericks stave off elimination at least for one more night as they get a terrific total team effort led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who combine for what would be 50 points in game number 4. In fact, both of them doing all of their work in just 3 quarters, because the Celtics pulled the plug on game 4 and waved the white flag with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, as the Mavericks were absolutely destroying the Celtics in every facet of the game. The Mavericks wind up pulling their starters with a minute and a half left in the third quarter. How the Mavericks were able to utilize a terrific rookie who's got now multiple double-doubles in the NBA Finals. I'm talking about Dereck Lively II, him becoming only the second player to have multiple double-doubles in his rookie season. See Magic Johnson back in 1980 as the only other player to do that. And his three-pointer in the first quarter, yes, a Dereck Lively three-pointer ignited the Dallas Mavericks as they were able to dominate Boston from start to finish to be able to get what was their first win of the NBA Finals. A Mavericks team who had been held under 100 points in each of the first 3 games of this Finals exploded for 122. In fact, Tim Hardaway Jr. got in the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter and knocked down 5 3-pointers to have 15 points in the fourth quarter alone. Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic outscored the Celtics by themselves combined in the first quarter, 22-21. All things were working together for the Mavericks' good, if you will, to be able to get this win. How they got this done? They started by attacking and getting into the middle of the paint. The Dallas Mavericks in Game 4 scored 60 of their 122 points in the paint. They were able to get inside with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving taking the ball to the basket. Luka had 6 of the first 8 points of the game for the Mavericks. Jayson, Tatum, and Jaylen Brown combined for the first 9 points for the Celtics, as the Celtics led 9-8 5 minutes in. But the Mavericks went on what was a 17-5 run to take what was a 25-14 lead with just over 3 minutes left in the first quarter after a Luka Doncic layup. Again, getting into the paint. At one point, the Mavericks made 5 straight field goals to be able to get themselves that lead. They would eventually outscore Boston 26-12 over the final 7 minutes of that first quarter, with Luka Doncic going for 13 points, Kyrie Irving going for 9. As I mentioned, they combined for 22 of the Mavericks' 34 first quarter points, outscoring the Celtics combined 22-21. The defense was the story in this game for Dallas. We talk about a total team effort, the most complete game that the Mavericks have played so far this postseason, as they were able to handle their business, holding the Celtics in the first half to just what was 35 points, the fewest points in the Joe Mazzulla era for the Boston Celtics, as the Mavericks led by 26 at halftime, scoring 34 points in that first quarter and 27 in the second quarter. But Kyrie Irving getting to the lefty layup made it 10-9 with 6:50 left in the first quarter. And then for me, what was the play of the game? Dereck Lively II taking a three-pointer in the right corner and draining it off the assist from Luka Doncic to make it 13-11 midway through the first quarter. That was the play of the game. It ignited the Dallas Mavericks. It ignited the Mavericks crowd, who were looking for something to cling and hang on to continue to give them hope that the Mavericks would find a way to avoid the sweep at the American Airlines Center, and that they did. And this talented rookie, who has grown throughout the course of the season, and if you have followed me on Kevin Gray Sports on Twitter, and you've seen, obviously, practice footage of the Dallas Mavericks, you have seen Dereck Lively, Daniel Gafford, and others working on those three-pointers with Sean Sweeney during Mavericks practice. And Dereck Lively, the confidence that he had to take that three with Jayson Tatum leaving him wide open in the right corner, he took it and he made it, and he made it with confidence, looking fluid with the three-pointer. And that gave you an indication that the Mavericks were willing to do anything and everything to try and win this game, including having their talented rookie, who has struggled through the first few games of this series, be able to take that shot with confidence and knock it down. Dereck Lively II talking about that three and the confidence being instilled in him by his teammates, specifically with Luka Doncic, and what he is continuing to do to grow and how he learned from that moment, knocking down that three. Take a listen.
Could you have ever imagined that, even though you shoot three-pointers every practice, that you're going to make your first one Game 4 of the NBA Finals?
It's for her. She helped me make it. She's going to help me make a lot more. She helped me make it to the free throw line. She helped me make reads. I'm just thankful for having Luka pass me the ball in that position. I'm happy I knocked it down. Just got to be able to make the next one.
What are the chances we're going to see some more of them throughout the series?
They leave me open in the corner, I'm going to get them up for sure. It's just having that trust. Like I said, Luka going to give me the ball. As soon as I shot it, he knew he kind of jumped for joy when it went in. So just having that reaction from my teammates is amazing. Just makes me want to just learn, makes me want to just practice and just do more.
So Dereck Lively, look, if there's going to be more of those open opportunities, he says that he's going to take those shots if they're available to him. And look, that's going to be situational based off of him being open to take some of those shots. But now that we know that he has the confidence to take those shots and the audacity to take that shot and make it in an NBA Finals, making his first ever career three-pointer in an NBA Finals game, it just shows you the Mavericks and what kind of desperation that they were playing with, but the confidence at which they were able to do it. And the Mavericks shooting 43% from three in that first quarter, 58% overall, led by 13 at the end of one, as the Celtics shot just 22% from three and 38% overall from the field. That defense and the hustle that the Mavericks played, because you give credit to a guy like Josh Green, who made some plays on some 50-50 balls. He was able to get a putback dunk off of a Kyrie Irving missed three-pointer that had the Mavericks up by 10 with 1:22 left. Then P.J. Washington drilling the Mavericks' second three-pointer in transition to put them up 34-21 at the end of the first quarter with 29 seconds left. It took every single member of this team to be able to get it done. And one person in particular who will detail throughout the course of the show as well, and Dante Exum, helping the bench alongside Dereck Lively come alive to be able to really help the Mavericks get this win. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs, thank you for hanging out with us through our spot, and thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast in Aura, as the Mavericks obliterate the Celtics in Game 4 of the NBA Finals to get on the board in this best-of-7 series as they force a Game 5 in Boston on Monday. Dereck Lively with a massive double-double in this game for the Mavericks. We talked about the huge three-pointer that he hit to really get this Mavericks team going. And that was part of a series of plays where Lively hit a three in the right corner, then blocked a Xavier Tillman shot, and then got a lob dunk, all on consecutive plays to really show you and get things going from an energy standpoint for the bench of the Dallas Mavericks. And that, to me, was a big lift for the Mavericks in terms of their bench scoring, which scored 54 points in game number 4. And I want to point to a quick moment in the first quarter because it may not get talked about all that much, but it showed me that the Mavericks were in the fight. And this came with 22 seconds left in the first quarter. Derrick Jones Jr. had a foul on Jayson Tatum, and they got into a little shove and a little jawing there for a couple of seconds. And that again came with 22 seconds left in the first quarter. You say, Kevin, why are you pointing that out? I point it out because it finally showed some fight on the Mavericks' part. The Celtics have been way too comfortable so far in the first 3 games of this series, getting what they wanted in terms of backdoor cuts and easy buckets, playing the kind of game that they have wanted to play in the first 3 games of this series. But the Mavericks finally stood up for themselves and showed the kind of fight, desperation, energy, and effort needed to be able to be the aggressor against the Celtics, which they were from the outset of game number 4. But I thought that moment was a good one to show you that the Mavericks were in the fight and were going to bring the fight to Boston all night long. And that's exactly what they did, because all the conversation going into game 4, especially for Luka Doncic, was how poorly he has played on the defensive end. The Mavericks stepped up in a big way defensively, forcing what was 14 turnovers, holding the Celtics to just 34% from 3 and 36% overall from the field, while dominating on the offensive glass, on the glass overall, 52-31. And yes, they did dominate on the offensive glass as well, out-rebounding the Celtics 13-4. But I point out those plays when it comes to the hustle and the energy, winning the 50-50 balls, doing the kinds of things that Maverick basketball has been about, especially during the second half of the year, being led with their defense. And the guy who was taking the brunt of it was Luka Doncic, who answered the call, not just with the 29 points that he scored, but on the defensive end. It's ironic that he scored 29 points, because if you look at what he was as the primary defender against Celtics players in game 4, he held them to just 2 of 9 from the field when he was the primary defender, giving you a much better idea of being better on his rotations, getting out to shooters like Jayson Tatum and others to really put a stamp on this game on the defensive end. And that gets us to obviously what happened in the second quarter, because we talked about what the Mavericks needed in terms of a total team effort to win the game. The Mavericks up by 13 to begin the second quarter. They were able to increase it to 15 at 40-25, 4 minutes into the period, thanks to Dante Exum, who had 5 of the Mavericks for 6 points of the period. And I point out Exum because we've seen at times when he's had opportunities to play that he's provided a spark for the Mavericks. You go back to game 3, he had that dunk on Jayson Tatum, was able to make some things happen, and we didn't see him again for the rest of game 3. Jason Kidd deciding to turn to Tim Hardaway Jr. to try to find some offense off the bench. We also saw it in game 2 when Exum got his opportunity as well, made a couple of things happen. And we have seen when he's been able to be locked in and knocking down shots from the outside, providing the Mavericks a third ball handler, that he is capable of playing alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving because of the defense, length, and athleticism that he provides. And when he is confident as a shooter, knocking down threes when he has the opportunities to do so. He did that in game 4, 10 big points for the Mavericks off the bench and sparking that unit to be able to continue to put the pedal to the metal against Boston. And it was interesting when I was at shoot around prior to game 4, the last person that was on the floor for the Mavericks after shoot around was Dante Exum, getting up shots with assistant coach Daryl Armstrong and putting in the extra work to be able to have an opportunity to have the impact on the game that he did. Dante Exum, of course, in game number 4 was a plus 15 for the Dallas Mavericks. So it shows you when you're putting in the work, continuing to stay ready, and taking advantage of the opportunity, you can be able to have the kind of game that Dante Exum did. The Mavericks eventually pushed their lead to 20 at 45-25 as they outscored the Celtics 11-4 to start the first 5.5 minutes of the period. That eventually got up to 25 as the Mavericks defense again was terrific, as the Celtics went 4 minutes without a basket during that particular point. Kyrie Irving hit a layup with 5 minutes left to push the lead up to 25. But Dante Exum hitting a three-pointer made it 39-22 with just over 9 minutes left in that second quarter. Kyrie Irving making the save with a 50-50 ball, finding Luka Doncic for the hoop and the harm with the layup, and he got the and one. He would make that free throw to make it 43-25 with just over 7 minutes left in the first half. Dončić punishing the Celtics at the nail and in the mid-range, taking what the defense gave him, because when you look at the three-pointers that the Mavericks made between Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, they made one between the two of them. In fact, Luka and Kyrie went a combined 1 of 14 from the three-point line, but they still were able to put in 50 points because of their ability to devastate in the mid-range, at the nail, knocking down jumpers, being able to get to the cup and finishing at the rim. They were able to do a lot of their damage in the paint and also pushing it in transition. What you saw in game 4 was the Mavericks playing at their absolute best in every facet of the game, pushing the pace in transition to get easy buckets, being led by their defense. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving pacing this team from a scoring standpoint and getting contributions from the others on this team, namely Dereck Lively and also Dante Exum. This was the complete Mavericks team that we have been waiting to see in this NBA Finals, and their defense being able to push them. Luka Doncic being able to take Sam Hauser off the dribble to get the hoop and a harm with a floater over Al Horford for another and one. He hit that free throw to complete that three-point play. Mavericks up by 23 with just under 6 minutes left in the first half. Dončić again pushing it in transition, getting a layup that eventually increased the lead to 26. And then Maxi Kleber knocking down a three-pointer in the right corner to make it a 61-35 halftime lead going into the second half. The Mavericks hitting 15 threes in this game, shooting nearly 41% from downtown, because Boston, who was the number 1 team in the league this year, making nearly 17 threes per game, they had continued to shoot at volume and knock down enough threes to be able to put this series in a 3-0 spot for them going into game 4. But the Mavericks were able to keep up with the three-point shot. And you say, Kevin, a lot of those came, especially in the fourth quarter, with Tim Hardaway Jr. knocking down 5 threes of his own. But in the first 3 quarters, the Mavericks doing what they needed to do to be able to not only take their threes, but limit the Boston Celtics in the threes that they took in the first 3 quarters to give themselves an opportunity. And they played their best defensive half of basketball, arguably, that we've seen from them all season long. Derrick Jones Jr. getting a block on Jaylen Brown, providing some good weak side help. You saw that in the first half as well. Everything that we have come to know about the Mavericks and the way that they've been able to play on both ends of the floor during the second half of the year, you saw that in game number 4. And as we go to the second half, obviously, the Mavericks already up 26 to begin the second half, doing the thing that we've seen them do in third quarters when in terms of getting Daniel Gafford involved. He scored the first 6 points of the quarter for the Mavericks when he was able to get things going. You saw Gafford be able to get the dunk on an alley-oop from Luka Doncic on a run-out. That made it 67-38 with 10.5 minutes left in the third. Again, what do the Mavericks like to do? Get out of transition, push pace where they were a top 10 pace team all year long, but also get the vertical game going the way that they did in game 4. That, again, was another hallmark of what you were seeing in terms of Mavericks basketball playing at their capabilities. P.J. Washington knocking down a three-pointer. Obviously, the game out of hand at that point when they were up 70-38 with 9.5 minutes left in the third. But Kyrie Irving getting an offensive rebound for a second chance basket that made it 78-44. I'm pointing out these plays because it highlights for you not only what you had to play with in terms of the sense of desperation that the Mavericks had to play with, obviously, to stave off elimination and to keep their season going, but when they did, putting the pressure on Boston to force them into shots that they didn't necessarily want to take. And the Boston was extremely poor shooting the ball, as we mentioned, just 36% from the field in game number 4. But the Mavericks were the ones that were the aggressors on both the offensive and defensive ends to be able to do so. Kyrie Irving talking about that aggressive mentality that the Mavericks came out with and making sure that they had everything in their armor and their artillery to be able to come out firing against the Boston Celtics. And that's exactly what they did. Take a listen.
I asked you on Wednesday about your mindset and staying positive and extending the series, and you shared a metaphor to get the bazooka, the 50 cal. Do you think that job was executed tonight, and then how does that help kind of the way y'all won tonight in a hostile Boston crowd for Game 5?
Yeah, no, it was how we started off the game, and our ability to go home, get some rest, not having the same 48 hours to get our bodies ready and recover. So it felt like it was pretty much the regular season in terms of that aspect. And what I was referring to in that metaphor is just go home and get all the armor, and get all the ammo that you need, and get ready for this, because we're going to have to keep firing away to give ourselves a chance on the offensive end. But I think for us, we wanted to make it very much more respectable than it has been in the past few games in terms of limiting our mistakes on the defensive end. We've been one of the best teams in the league of getting stops, and that's been our identity. And we play better, I think, offensively, and it's just my opinion. I think it can vary across the team, but I think we play better offensively when we're getting stops and able to push the pace and get easy opportunities in transition, which we weren't doing the past few games as often. So it felt good to be on the positive end of seeing our hard work reward us, and especially on the defensive end.
So the Mavericks will need that same type of mindset going into Game 5 to try and stave off elimination one more time, where, of course, the Mavericks were able to get their first win facing elimination in this postseason. But the Mavericks would push their lead to 36 at 88-52 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter after Dereck Lively's second straight dunk forced a timeout, where Joe Mazzulla decided that he and his Celtics had enough for game number 4, living to fight another day. As they pulled their starters with 3 minutes left, the Mavericks would do the same a minute and a half later as they led by 32 at the end of 3. Mavericks shooting 48% from the field in the third quarter there. But the Mavericks getting the vertical game going with Dereck Lively getting the dunk off of a Josh Green assist, who I thought played really well in game 4, again, with the hustle plays and the energy, making good basketball decisions, and Dereck Lively crushing it at the rim off of a Kyrie Irving assist. This was the kind of game that we had been wanting to see from the Dallas Mavericks, and you saw their defensive rotations. They were flying around the perimeter, forcing the Celtics into tough contested three-pointers, which is something that you've got to do against a team as good as Boston, shooting the ball from the three-point line. And the Mavericks executed their game plan to a T, getting out in transition, being able to, even when the Celtics had makes, pushing the ball to keep the Celtics on their heels. The Mavericks did a terrific job of that in game number 4, but also being led, as we mentioned, by their superstars in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And look, the conversation going into game 4, not just the defense and how poorly Luka Doncic had been playing, but his reaction to officials and the lack of composure that we had seen from the Mavericks in the first 3 games led by Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic played a quiet, focused, laser-like game in game 4 and let his game do the talking on both ends of the floor. And that is part of the maturation process, no matter how this series ends, that he will continue to have to learn and to go through. And when your flaws are being magnified on the stage of the NBA Finals, especially when you have the glaring ones at times that we see from Luka Doncic, it is very easy to point those out and to have a lot of conversation, nasty discourse, if you will, around certain things that Luka Doncic does and does not do on the floor. At least for one night, he showed that he can do it on both ends of the floor. And Jayson Kidd, I give him a lot of credit. While, yes, there were things to definitely criticize coming out of game 3, why he decided to go to Tim Hardaway over Dante Exum when Exum had been providing him some quality minutes and the opportunities that he had to do so. He went back to Exum, stuck with it, and Exum rewarded him with the kind of play that he had. But even prior to the game, Jayson Kidd, 3 minutes or so, taking up for his superstar in Luka Doncic, saying at one point, quote, "Give my guy a break. He has improved on the defensive end throughout the course of the season." And we have seen that in this postseason, whether it was against the Clippers, where he sat down and guarded and dealt with the likes of James Harden and others. We know that Dončić is capable of putting forward that kind of effort on the defensive end. What we and others who have been loudly talking, Brian Windhorst, about what the Mavericks haven't done and seen from their superstar and Luka Doncic is the consistency on that defensive end. He brought it in game 4. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but it's worth saying again. Boston was 2 of 9 from the field when Luka Doncic was the primary defender. That kind of effort and intensity and focus on both ends of the floor without talking to officials, focusing on what needed to be done to assure he and his team were locked in to provide the kind of effort needed to win game 4, that will have to continue, obviously, in game 5 to try to get it back to Dallas for game 6. But again, no matter how this series ends between the Mavericks and the Celtics, this is a learning lesson for Luka Doncic. Play your game, focus on the task at hand, not worrying about what you can't control, but control what you can, which is your abilities on both ends of the floor to provide your team the kind of effort, energy, focus, and all the buzzwords that you want to use to be able to help your team win a game. That's exactly what Luka Doncic did in game 4 for the Mavericks. It was all over from there going into the fourth quarter. As the Mavericks were up by 32 to begin the fourth, they outscored the Celtics 14-7 in the first 4 minutes of the period. Tim Hardaway Jr. lit it up from the three-point line, going 5 of 6 from downtown, scoring 15 points in a 6-minute span, as the Mavericks, of course, would go on to win by 38 points. And I say that when it comes to Hardaway because you give him, and look, he's a much maligned player on this team, but I'm sure it had to feel good for him just to see a bunch of threes get knocked in, even in mop-up duty. And Dante Exum, as we mentioned, who had a great game 4, kicked off the fourth quarter, knocking down a three-pointer to have the Mavericks up by 35. But again, it underscores what you have to have, the focus and mental energy and emotional capacity to deal with the ups and downs of these games. And the Mavericks were the aggressors and punched the Celtics in the mouth repeatedly in this game. And they held Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown to a combined 25 points after they had combined for 61 in game 3 to get them up 3-0. The Mavericks defense holding them to what was a combined 7 of 22 from the field. was exactly what the Mavericks needed to do to win this game. And some folks will say, look, the Celtics didn't necessarily care about game 4. They wanted to try to win the game and win the series in game 5 in Boston. They were trying to win this game. The Mavericks simply were the better team in this game against Boston. In fact, the Mavericks earning their first win against Boston this entire season. They had gone 0-5 to begin their games against, or I should say their series, regular season and NBA Finals against the Celtics. They get their first win of the season against them. But you give credit where credit is due to Dereck Lively II, who had a monster double-double with his 11 points and 12 rebounds in this game, and really was the guy that set the tone from an energy standpoint. And again, that three-pointer was absolutely incredible and sent that Mavericks crowd at the AAC into an absolute frenzy. So the Mavericks find a way to stave off elimination. They do all the little things which we have been calling for them to do to be able to execute on both ends of the floor, and they did so extremely well against the Celtics. Now we will see what happens in Game 5 on Monday nights. Will the Celtics find a way to close things out and win it on their home floor for their 18th championship in franchise history? Or will the Mavericks find a way to get it back to Dallas for a Game 6? Because not only have you won Game 4, but now you've given the Boston Celtics something to think about. Yes, you remember last year when they got down 3-0, they made it a series by winning 3 straight, but ultimately losing in Game 7 to the Miami Heat after Jayson Tatum turned his ankle and couldn't finish Game 7. You go back to the 2022 NBA Finals where the Celtics were up 2-1, had a lead in the fourth quarter, but they weren't able to hold it. This is a team where we have seen them not be able to perform at their best. The first 3 games of this series, they looked like the best team in the league, but at least for one night, they looked very ordinary. The Mavericks are now making the Celtics think about it, and we'll see how that plays itself out in game number 5 on Monday night. We'll have plenty more coverage throughout the course of the weekend as the Mavericks prepare to play that 5th game on Monday in Boston to try to give themselves a chance to extend the series once again to get it back to Dallas, and we'll see what happens from there. But the Mavericks absolutely obliterate the Celtics by 38 points to be able to win Game 4 and get on the board in this series as they remain down 3-1 to the Boston Celtics. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating. Write a review for it while you're there. If you watch this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, like and comment on the video. Hit that subscribe button and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports as well. This has been Inside the Mavs presented by Aura.